Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zach, and today I am driving a 2006 Chrysler Crossfire. Up front is a 3.2 liter V6, and down below is a 6-speed manual transmission. Now, I am super excited to be driving this Crossfire for two reasons. First of all, although I have driven Crossfires before, never on a sunny day. I always get caught in terrible weather, seemingly whenever I drive Chrysler Crossfires, so I am breaking that streak today. But the second reason is the fact that I love misfit cars that don't really have a place in time, history, or people's garages. And so the Chrysler Crossfire is kind of an orphan, a seemingly unloved vehicle from the past, and so I'm excited to share it with you today. But if you would like to share your odd or unloved vehicle with me, you can head on over to my website, zackpradel.com/submit. It's a quick and easy submission form, takes under a minute to fill out, and I come out to you. But let's get back to that 3.2 liter V6 under the hood, making 215 horsepower. So there were two engines offered here in the Crossfire throughout its model run. It was this 3.2 liter or another 3.2 liter that had been supercharged. So this is the non-supercharged variant, and it is a Mercedes engine. This is mostly Mercedes parts as a vehicle, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But it is the M112 engine from Mercedes, and I have to say that I like it. It does deliver a decent punch for the vehicle that I'm driving. Am I breaking land speed records anytime I want to go to the Stop and Shop? No, that's not really the whole point of this car. This is kind of a cruiser, and the engine really reinforces that. Now, if you wanted to go faster, you could have gotten the SRT6, which had that Mercedes compressor engine, but again, this is not that. However, if you do have a SRT6, I would love to drive it, so please submit it to my website. And while we're talking about Chryslers that I want to review, if anyone has a Chrysler Aspen, I would love to film one. I've always wanted to film a Chrysler Aspen. Maybe not that one, but one. Now, like I said, paired to it is a 6-speed manual transmission. Now, you could only get the manual transmission on the naturally aspirated Crossfire. If you do want the supercharger, you have to be okay with automatic. The shifter is fantastic. It's really, really good. It feels like a worn-in pair of jeans. It's comfortable, it's stretchy, it's light and easy, it's comfy. And I didn't really expect that out of the Crossfire. I expect American cars to drive, at least in terms of transmissions, like an absolute box of rocks, and that couldn't be farther from the truth with this Crossfire. Last but not least, about the drivetrain of the Crossfire, it is, of course, rear-wheel drive. So how does it feel to actually drive a Chrysler Crossfire in manual? It's actually pretty good. The only major downside of the driving experience is the visibility. This is a little cocoon of an automobile, and so seeing out of it is not the easiest task to do, especially if you are unfortunately taller. It might be a little rough. However, the steering is a little heavy but controllable. The ride isn't too stiff. It does have a sort of comfy cruiser feel to it, like that engine I mentioned earlier. And so it's actually a pretty pleasurable motoring experience. And they did make these in convertible to even further push that laid-back cruiser lifestyle. With that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have 3 gauges. Off to the left is my coolant temperature and fuel. In the center is my speedometer, and off to the right is my tachometer. I love the design of these. I think they look really, really good, and they're definitely also styled in that Art Deco style, which the exterior is featured in as well, which we'll talk about later on. On the steering wheel, I actually don't get any forward-facing buttons. Now, I do get cruise control. It's a stalk off to the left. The actual steering wheel itself doesn't have any buttons, which kind of creates this really nice and clean look. Off to the left, I have a little climate control vent and the headlight switches, as well as fog light switches. And moving out of the door, I have a speaker and latch to get in and out, but that's pretty much it. Again, this interior almost feels like a concept car. Everything is smooth. There's nothing too obtruse, and I really like that. Moving into the center, we do have 2 climate control vents. Our climate controls themselves, so dual zone climate, which is really, really nice, especially for 2006, especially for Chrysler. Fan speed off to the left, where to send it off to the right, all of those goodies there, and I like the symmetry in there. Then we do have an aftermarket radio because stuff from 2006 doesn't keep up with modern tech. However, this is what the factory Chrysler Crossfire radio looks like, in case you're curious. Then we do have a whole lineup of buttons. So we have our heated seat off to the left, our spoiler up and down, so this does have a rear mounted spoiler that is controllable. Then we do have our traction control off button, hazard switch, central locking, our security button so it can't be towed. This will disable the alarm in case it gets towed, and then our passenger heated seat. I then do have a pop-out ashtray and a cigarette lighter, along with the airbag off button, and then we come to the shifter. Again, everything is smooth, everything is clean and uninterrupted, and that carries on with the shifter. The shifter looks great, feels sort of space agey and futuristic, which I love. Then we get our window switches off to the left and right. Very, very typical German car to have the window switches found in the center. And then we have our power mirror switch, somewhat out in the middle of nowhere. I guess this could be one of the only misplaced objects in the Crossfire's interior. Then we do have a pop-open cup holder. We'll do a big freaking bottle test, but it's just for vanity at this point. It fails through and through. Then we do get a little center console, and we'll talk about the seats. The seats are comfortable. They are this nice sort of more modern taut leather, and overall I have to say they're pretty good seating experiences. But unfortunately, the Chrysler Crossfire does not have any back seats, so we won't do a back seat review, but we will hop around the very back and talk about the trunk and cargo space. Let's talk about the Crossfire here. So trunk open up like this, kind of a small opening, not gonna lie, kind of a small opening, but once we're in here, okay space. Now you can go a lot out to the sides here, decent space there, but other than that, this opening is just so small that it's kind of annoying, not gonna lie. I do get a pass through into the passenger compartment, which is nice, but other than that, I don't get any amenities back here at all. There's the trunk for you. Not super useful, but I'd say on the upper side of useful, given the fact that this is a two-door coupe. I'd say more useful than a 350Z if it had a slightly larger opening. Now we gotta talk about the looks, and this is one of the more polarizing parts of the Chrysler Crossfire. According to Chrysler themselves, they wanted to go with a more Art Deco styling. Art Deco being a popular design style in the 1930s. When you think of 1930s things, end of the Gatsby era, that sort of vibe, that's Art Deco. And so, funny enough, the Chrysler building itself is actually an Art Deco building. So they took inspiration from their own building in New York, as well as automobiles from that era, which I'll show a handful here. This sort of more swoopy, smooth styling. I love this advertisement from the era where, for some reason, a Ghost can grab the earlier 1930s cars, but when they switched over to the more flowy concepts in the late 1930s, then a Ghost can't grab you. It's a strange predicament to be in, but I guess that's what they were going for, and I love that design language. Speaking of the design language, this vehicle was actually designed by Eric Studard. I'll put his name up on the screen. Kind fellow. He actually later left Chrysler. This was one of the first vehicles he ever designed, and he went on to design the Hyundai Genesis Coupe and the Hyundai Elantra from the late 2000s. So that was actually designed by the same guy as this. Kind of radically different, but cool nonetheless. This is also finished in oyster metallic, golden oyster metallic, which I think is a very nice touch. And it's not black or white. But now, with all of that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think driving yet another Chrysler Crossfire? Well, I wanted to do this video for several reasons. First of all, like I mentioned at the top of the video, I love collecting obscure vehicles here on my channel. And the Chrysler Crossfire is one of those somewhat mainstream obscure vehicles. A lot of people know about it and know how weird it is, but it's still weird and unloved at the same time. It's like those weird TikTok live people. Everyone knows about them, but I wouldn't consider anyone like a fan of them. Maybe one or two, and that's where the Chrysler Crossfire shines, is to those one or two owners. So why is that? Why was this car given such a bad rap? Well, first of all, it's a Chrysler, which is an American brand, but this was built in Germany. This used almost entirely all Mercedes parts. This was built off the SLK platform. Now, the SLK got a new generation by the time the Crossfire came out, so they didn't really exist at the same time for very long. But this car is this car. And so that leaves you in a weird spot. In order to own one of these, you have to know a mechanic that is willing to work on them. From the owners that I have talked to, Chrysler dealers do not appreciate these because they're mostly Mercedes parts, and now that they're getting so old, they don't really have the stuff to work on them. Mercedes dealers don't like them because they're Chrysler products. And so the owner of this vehicle, along with two other owners I've spoken to, they have to find an independent source. Apparently there's a guy here in Illinois named Rudy that seems to be the Crossfire whisperer. So shout out to him. But that leaves this car in limbo. And unfortunately, it's not very proud of its European roots. Now, out of curiosity, I wanted to see how this car fared in Europe because there were right-hand drive versions of the Crossfire sold in Europe. And the answer is pretty much the same. No one really loved them too much. Chrysler actually tried to establish themselves as Chrysler of Europe back in 1967, but it only lasted until 1978, 11 years. They never really got a good foothold operating as a European brand, like Ford has done so friggin' well. And so if you're European, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments, because there weren't as many Chryslers in Europe as we did get here. Pause for a second. That's the other Mercedes Chrysler sort of combo vehicle, the Chrysler Pacifica, of which my family actually owns one, but I just happened to run into one. Kind of funny. And a similar color too. But even with all of that being said, this isn't a bad car. I've actually quite enjoyed my experience driving it. I really am genuinely blown away by this shifter. It's fantastic, and the clutch is nice and easy. It's very forgiving. It's like I'm driving a proper manual car, and I don't know, I just didn't really expect that out of the Crossfire. It's also decently comfortable. The road noise isn't too loud. It has a sort of personal pleasure craft sort of feeling to it. Again, rooting back to those 1930s Art Deco styling, the lines on the hood really remind me of that of like a boat. And not like a Dodge Challenger super yacht boat, but like a, you know, me and the lady heading out on the lake in a wooden 1930s boat, that sort of feel. Not the aircraft carrier that is the Dodge Challenger. So I don't know. I'm just kind of rambling in this video, and I apologize for that, but this car is kind of a rambling car. There's no real dramatic upsides or downsides. You have to mention the fact that it's a Mercedes, but also a Chrysler. There's so many asterisks, so many commas when it comes to talking about the Crossfire that I think that also shunned some people away, is that it's just a lot. But when I say a lot, it doesn't always mean that it's bad. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to Argo for letting me take out his Chrysler Crossfire. It was so nice to be back behind the wheel of one of these in the sunshine. I can't stress that enough. It was so nice to finally drive a Crossfire when God wasn't throwing things at me. Argo is absolutely awesome to work with, a fellow Mazda 3 owner as well, so that's flippin' neat. So nice, very knowledgeable about these cars, and I look forward to working with him again in the future. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.